So I do apologize for interrupting the video before, but you know, I'm not a filmographer. At any rate, I'm comparing on the left the Spanish version of the Tarot of the Master, or the Giovanni Vacchetta Tarot, and also I'm comparing it with the Tarot of the Master put out by Scarabeo. So the one on the left is the Scarabeo, and the other, obviously, on the left is the Spanish. So we see with the Fool, the color is a little bit different. The original was black and white, or sepia line drawings, and so, you know, the color of the cards, once it was put in the hands of colorists, was really at their discretion, you know. So let's look. The Spanish deck put the cards in a different order than usual. It put all the ones, you know, all the aces and the one together, or actually the Fool. The Fool came first, and then the other. Anyway, so here we have the Ace of Batons, the Ace of Cups. So in the Spanish version, we have more of a propensity for background color, whereas with the Scarabeo, the background is white. But notice the difference without the borders, you know? Much nicer, right? Ace of Swords. And here we get to the one. A bateleur, or a bagat. So you can see how they have quite different interpretation of the way the color should be. Now notice that the Spanish deck is using Arabic numbers rather than Roman numerals of the. So I don't know what the original had. I'm presuming they probably had Roman numerals, you know, but I don't know. There are many Italian decks of this time that did have Arabic numbers. So far, what do you think? You can see that the Scarabeo, I think the image appears to be a bit bigger, right? The cards are the same size. So it does appear, well, maybe not. Maybe it's just an optical illusion because of the color. That's a distinct possibility. And the two of the trumps, the popes. Moving on to the threes. And look at the imagery, you know. I mean, this is 1893, so this is pre, this is pre Pamela Coleman Smith, you know. I mean, I do realize that the Solabusca also had illustrated pip cards, but it wasn't the norm. And so I find it you know, I wonder to what degree Pamela Coleman Smith and Waite were familiar. Whoops, my bad. Were familiar, you know, with this deck as well. Could have been on their radar. The Empress. I mean, they do look like different cards, you know. And this one has a striping on the, what is that, the bodice of a shield? I don't know what that is, actually. I have to look it up. But they look like completely different decks. The color makes such a difference. And any decks that are restored, that are put out by multiple publishers, you know, you can definitely see that they all bring a little something different to a deck, you know. Even all the different incarnations of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, there's so many varieties of those that are based on her drawings directly, right? And there's like the Radiant, there's the Universal, there's the original, there's, you know, so just the change of color, you see what a difference color does bring. And all the, you know, TDM decks, you know, like the Conver and the Noble, you know, the one by Peterson and the one by Flournoy. They're the same deck, based on the same historic deck, but, you know, the color of the way they were presented make them seem almost like completely different decks. I guess that's why a collector loves to have as many versions as they can. I'm a collector, and I'm also a reader. I've been reading for 43 years, so I am a reader. I read all of my decks, and I just find some people sometimes criticize, like, oh, you think you have a few too many, and I guess I do. I have over 200 decks. I'm sorry I keep shaking this, but if I can justify it, I'm comfortable picking up just about any deck and reading it. You know, the more familiar you are with different decks, you know, and you see what different decks bring to the table, you know, I feel very comfortable. I could pick up just about any deck, and even if it's not one that I've ever used before, I've seen enough, you know, that I can adjust very quickly. I don't know. Not that anyone has to justify why they have too many decks, but I do think that it is an asset to a reader to have more than one deck. You can read one deck very well, or you can read many decks very well. You know, tarot is a language, and each deck has its own language. While it's true that they have the standard cast of characters, not every artist interpreted every card in the same way. And you might see something in one card from one deck that you didn't see in the same card of a different deck. And so your interpretation can vary depending on the deck you use. You know, two people using two different decks but laying down the exact same cards would more than likely come up with different interpretations, although they might be able to see where the other got their interpretation from, because you're not using the exact deck, it's going to speak slightly differently. And then, of course, you know, Rider-Waite-Smith, or the Order of the Golden Dawn, and the Thoth, and the TDM, and then the Italians, they all speak a different language. And then there's the Continental. So there are multiple languages spoken. One thing that irritates me greatly, and I'm going off on a tangent here, is when people use a TDM or a PIP style deck, but then they superimpose Rider-Waite-Smith meanings on them. Well, what's the point of getting a TDM deck if you're going to do that? Just use Rider-Waite-Smith, right? You use different decks to celebrate the different languages of the deck. Even if I were to do a reading using this deck, if I were to do a reading with the Spanish deck, I might come up with a different interpretation than using this exact same deck with the Scarabeo version, because something about the color might have attracted me or made me think differently, or even seeing a Spanish word, you know. Every deck has its own personality. Look at that, like music. So the bastos, or the batons, seem to be musically inclined. Six of Cups. In some ways, I do like the Scarabeo better. The colorization, I think I prefer the paler background. However, it's a tight, you know, there are those borders to contend with. So I'm thrilled to have both of them, really. And I'm not one that chops off borders. So even though these are unfortunate, this thick green, you know, is unpleasant, I'm not really sure what it would do to the backs, which are already bad enough. Yeah, they wouldn't be symmetrical, because on this side you'd take more off and less on this side. So you'd be kind of lopsided, you know. You can hear the backs while I'm thinking of it. Again with the music. So maybe they're like pipe organs. Well, these are all these are all different staves. These are all different. I think actually this is for diversity. Huh? All different types of staves. The Chariot. No horses. But the wheels do look like they would turn. Look at all the different swords even, you know. There's almost the scimitars and the straight. And then, I don't know what those are. Daggers. So beautiful. Diversity. Oh, I messed up. So either I messed up somewhere. I don't know what I showed with this, but it wasn't this. so I apologize. I didn't even notice. I see that the roses here, the flowers here are purple, and here they're red. The background in the Spanish is pink. Background in this is white, of course. The ribbon, you notice more, is purple. They both have their own personalities. I don't know. I flip-flop back and forth. I'm not sure which I like best. I'd like to hear what you think. Putting aside the green borders. Put the green borders aside when you make the decision about the color. Again with the music. The Hermit. And here he's got a crutch, as he does in some of the older Italian decks. There's a crutch or cane, but there's no hourglass here. It is a lantern. By 1893, I guess it was universally accepted to be a lantern. Spades or swords. Again, the smaller ones are dagger-like or scimitar, where they're curved and then they get straight. This artist had a beautiful eye. What a wonderful eye. And there is a different feel in having the Arabic numeral number rather than the Roman numeral. There's quite a... Oh, and here you can see distinctly that there's water in the background. Here you don't see it. You don't notice it. And Wheel of Fortune here means business, right? When you're on top of the world, you're on top of the world. And when you're on the bottom, man, there's no mistake in that. And here we have Fortitude. With the column and the lion. And just with a hand gesture, she's telling him to chill, you know? The Hanged Man. And in this deck, the Death card is named, not just numbered. He's a dandy. He's got a hat with a feather in it. And a cane or a crutch, much like the hermit did. boat in the background and miscellaneous objects. Temperance. I love this devil. And there's a building in France, I'm sure, Paris, I think, that has the facade is this, the mouth of the devil. Beautiful. Now I'm just sucked into the Scarabeo star more. I don't know, it's a tough call. The moon. Diana, of course. The sun. Judgment. The world. The angel is much more pronounced in the Spanish version. So the knight has taken on the appearance of a court gesture, and as his staff, he has a bit of a court gesture motif. I'm also noticing in the Lo Scarabeo that in the background they incorporate smudges, you know, on a variety of the cards. There appear to be smudges, I guess in an effort to make it look older. But now that I see them, I prefer the cleaner appearance of the Spanish. It's subtle, but and here are the adornments. Because I have two different cards. Duh. Here we go. Again, and maybe because of it's the coloration, the detail on the Lo Scarabeo appears to be much larger. If you see I don't know what you would call this on the horse. Oh, wow, and there's a sheep here for you. Really Queen of Cups looks like she belongs in the kitchen, huh? Ooh, all right. But the Queen of Swords is a woman of the world, out and about, not on a throne. Neither is the Queen of Coins, but she is at home. The King of Batons. Look, reminds me of old King Cole, right? Old King Cole with a merry old soul. The King of Swords. The King of Gold, or coins rather. Boy, it reminds me of the Magician, no? Before a table with, oh, he's got gold here, but or coins, but has a similar, he's got his swords, cups in the background, fire. Interesting. Okay. The Valet of Batons with the dog. Valet of Cups. Of Swords. And of coin. So there we have it, a comparison side by side of all the cards of each deck. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it puts it on your radar, the Spanish deck, as an alternative to the Los Scarabeo, which has these borders. You know, the colors are different, so you have to bear that in mind, but they're both, you know, I think they're both beautifully done. At any rate, if you've enjoyed this, please give me a thumbs up. Visit my website, www.tarotclarity.com, and until next time, peace.